Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to kick off a brand new theme this week, which is strange music. We're just going to listen to music that's a little odd, a little unusual, a little outside the norm, or maybe a lot outside the norm. We'll find out as we get through this week's selections. Today, we're going to kick it off with an Odraza track. This comes off of an EP that's only one song long. That song is called Acedia, or maybe Acedia. It is almost 21 minutes in length. Let's dive in, see what Odraza has in store for us today. So we have a rigidity of pitch, but then we also have those really wide bends. A bit of a slow start so far. We're past the 10% mark. Barely seems like we're doing anything yet. I keep expecting the song to start now that we're out of the intro, but it is Strange Music Week, and maybe this is going to be the track, something a bit more atmospheric. I am enjoying the dynamics though. It's nice to have actual volume contrast in a track. A dulcimer over there. Could be a very, like a tightly wound lute style instrument too. Anyways, it is a very taut string being plucked rapidly. It is a rather segmented work so far. Not necessarily pure silence between movements, but at least to me, clear segments, clear moments when I can say, okay, that section is over and we're starting something new. I'd say that generally the atmosphere has been similar throughout, but we have certainly shifted between ideas, ways to represent this feeling. What is this? Okay, there is some more traditional metal in here. Interesting percussion for it, though. Yeah, all the cool metric mod coming in on the percussion. The drummer changing up rhythm, changing up syncopation. It's wild because, you know, the guitars are heavy. They're on this beat. The drums sometimes lean into that, but then they'll, let me just do my own thing for a little bit, and then they snap back in line. I don't know what I'm hearing. Part of it sounds like scraping, but other parts sound wet. And wet sounds in headphones is just not great. I kind of felt that everything had a rather dark vibe. Ominous, brooding, antagonistic even at times, ominous. This, it's a darker shade, but there's mystery here, which I kind of view a bit more lighter. Intrigue, maybe. More of a neutral concept than I think most of the previous sections. It doesn't feel like 4/4 because that bass comes in on the and of 4 rather than waiting for the downbeat of 1. But it certainly is. A little playful with that syncopation. The pitch rise changed the atmosphere. Yeah, dude. It had to happen sometime. This is Odraza after all. Nice production across all of this as well. It's very clearly laid out. Do we have 3 minutes of silence ahead of us? Um, I guess I'm gonna start some analysis, and if music comes in, I'll stop talking for that. See what's going on there. All right. Strange Music Week. One of the things I promised when I introduced this theme to my patrons is that I would not dismiss music as being odd. I would try my best to engage with it using the tools that I have and see what I can glean out of it. I know that in the past I have been a bit dismissive for anything that kind of sits in the more avant-garde or experimental realm of music, simply because a lot of how I understand music is through theory. And once you get outside of theory into the experimental realms, how I understand music isn't really applicable. But I'm going to try not to go into that realm of discussion this week and try to stick to just talking about what is here rather than what isn't here. It's almost comical how I talked about, coming into that first analysis section. I didn't feel this was too strange. There were certainly some more atmospheric sections to the track, but almost everything was made with traditional instrumentation. There were still rhythmic devices. We were still following general harmony. There was some not special, like sound effects going on. But for the most part, understanding this through traditional theory isn't difficult. And they're at the end, and they're like, let's just throw a bunch of strange sounds together with very tense harmony and some sound effects, little water drops here and there, little pin drops, and Let's shake things up a little bit. Almost as if in response to what I was saying. That kind of cracks me up. What is this song doing? Well, let me save that for a little bit later. I want to point out something very cool that just happened. Silence. There are different accepted definitions of what music is. But generally speaking, the broadest, which is the one I typically ascribe to, is that music is a collection of sounds and silence. In the realm of metal, we don't usually get too much silence. In fact, in the realm of most music, we don't really get too much silence. If we stick to metal, tech death and gent are probably the close to using silence in a musical manner because of so much emphasis on space between beats to create that chugging feeling. Whether you're playing something in gent, which is, one note and a lot of syncopation, or tech death, where maybe you're playing a more rhythmically technical guitar riff or a drum part, and you really want to emphasize each individual attack. You make sure that there's space between them. This sort of precision is something I've brought up many times in some of my favorite tech death bands over the years. But very rarely do you hear a gap in the music in almost any genre. Maybe more than a few. A while ago, we had I don't even remember the name of the theme, but the idea was music with silence in it. And we had some pretty interesting songs for that week. I think it was a difficult song for people to find suggestions for as well, outside of the cliche stop, and then the song keeps going. But as the vocalist says stop, all the instruments cut out. Like that's cliche, but it is technically a moment of silence within a song, and it's probably the most popular use of silence in music is for impact after a word that implies an end or a nothing or something like that. It's really good word painting there for the music to pair well with the word or phrase being said. But this would have been perfect for that week, and I think would have been the largest gap of silence that not only is present in the track, but also a key ingredient to the song. I don't think that this silence has much to add to what came before it. I don't think that there's any way to pair that silence with the first 5 minutes of the track, for instance. But I do like in a song that feels vaguely unorthodox. As I mentioned, there's still a lot of things in here that generally make sense to me. There's harmony, there's rhythm, there's melody at times. It is a fairly atmospheric track, but it's not experimental. Strange, maybe, but not totally odd. Still using many of the rules and language of traditional music composition to explore this space. And part of this space, though, is silence. It's not like at the end of a final track, and then there's 7 minutes of silence before a hidden track on a record or on a CD. The last minute and a half or so of this track is not a special bonus aspect of this song. The silence, the 50 to like 80 seconds of silence there, is an integral part of this experience. This song is brooding, it is ominous, it is haunting at times, it is overbearingly metal at times, but it's also quiet. Not just quiet, but empty. The emptiness is part of what this track is exploring. Now, I listen to a lot of music, like a lot of music. And even I can't really think of any songs that use silence as exploration of a sonic space outside of John Cage's infamous 433. And that I don't even think I could ascribe to exploring silence because it actually explores the audience. The audience is the piece there, not the silence itself. There's actually a lot of sounds and noises in 433. So yeah, this might be might be the only track I can think of that uses silence as the exploration of a sonic landscape. And that in itself is pretty cool. I feel like I've talked about basically what amounts to nothing in this song for quite some time, but it really is fascinating. Not just its presence, but how I think it's being used here. I don't know what it's saying necessarily, other than an absence of a void within the music. For a track that feels as generally atmospheric as it does, the different atmospheres that we explore, emptiness is a portion of that. What else are we exploring, though? I had mentioned a few words already. I do think that this is fairly brooding at times. There's very few joyous elements in this track. Even when there is levity in the weight, that the instruments are small or narrow, that there's few layers, the harmonic information of this track is still heavy. There is still a darkness that sits over top. It pushes down on the listener. It is a generally negative track emotionally. Through that, though, there's actually quite a few different emotions that we explore. There is a general melancholy in places. It is just brooding, though, all of the time. It feels like it is deep in thoughts, trying to figure out why life is the way it is. I don't know. There seems to be a heavy weight, a heavy burden upon the song's shoulders, though, and it can't shake it. And it leads it into scary areas. There's certainly sections in here that are a bit more menacing, where the harmonic tension is ramped up. There is dissonance throughout. This is usually paired with instruments that are a bit more shrill, not as subdued as maybe a low bass tone just rumbling underneath. These are thinner, higher pitched sounds. But we also have sections that feel ominous. There's something scary here, but we don't know what it is. There's tension generally throughout all of this. We have rising and falling weight in general, size of instruments, size of the song, layering going on, even volume, which it was really nice to have volume contrast in a metal track. Honestly, the metal only came up like 2 times, but they are an atmospheric black metal track, and you can feel that influence in everything, even if sonically this doesn't come across as metal most of the time. But there's also intrigue in here, mystery, a want to solve something, a want to gain knowledge. But usually it's paired again with a darkness of some sort. Maybe we're searching for dark knowledge. Maybe the trek that we're going on for this insight is dangerous. I don't know. I didn't get much of the nuance or details in there, but there is that mix of darkness and intrigue. Makes me wonder how all of this is supposed to be understood collectively. As I mentioned earlier, there is a general theme throughout. I do feel that this track is fairly interconnected from start to finish. There's very few sections where I think to myself, well, that was kind of a weird turn. Everything makes sense, but everything is also segmented. We do this section with these instruments and this vibe, and then we do this section with these instruments and this vibe, and then that section with these instruments and that vibe. Some of these sections may have some minor evolution to them. We might add some extra instruments or fill out a harmonic style. Maybe we'll start with just a few notes to make a basic chord, and then we'll expand on what that chord is as we get through the section. But generally speaking, ideas do not flow into one another. There's a lot of crossfading in here where one section begins to diminish in volume and another grows in volume. We had a couple of sections where we reach near silence. We allow the final notes of one section to trail off, and right as they're about to completely decay entirely and make no noise, the next idea begins to fade in. Kind of like a crossfade, but not technically. We do have a couple of sections that fade to nothing. One of them actually takes us into silence, but there was a section about, I don't remember. It was in the middle of the track somewhere, like 10 to 15-minute range. We did have a section just silence, and then the next idea began. I don't think the bar actually reached perfect silence, in which case the volume bar disappears entirely, but it was just a little circle at the bottom rather than having any shape to the bar at all. Which basically means that there is audio, but not enough to quantify into volume. There's something going on here. It's just infinitely quiet. And I wonder about this too. There's a segmentation. What does that represent? Is this supposed to be viewed as scenes of a story? Is it supposed to be vignettes? Are we looking through memories? Is that why it's crossfading? Memories lead to other memories, but they are disconnected. These are different points in our time, in our history. And this all primarily looks at the non-metallic sections in here. We have harsh vocals in two sections, I think, and they are gnarly. Either there is some extra production going on, or this dude is making so many spit sounds in his throat that's being amplified and then mixed into all of the compression sound waves, all of the crackling going on, that I don't know. It sounds like a frog sometimes. I don't know. It's wild. Maybe it's just because I don't hear harsh vocals too often without anything around them that I don't get to hear all of this nuance, but it sounds gnarlier than typical for this type of harsh vocal. But there's also an aggression to that is present without aggression in the music, but is also present with musical aggression too. We have a more metallic section that comes in 7, 8 minutes into the track, something like that. And then, of course, all of this reaches a tip at the finale. Well, it's not. It's the third to last section, but the black metal part of the track. Blast beats, guitars. It's overwhelming. It's big. It takes up so much space. It puts such a weight upon you. For all of the atmosphere, all of the smaller size of this track, it knows how to take up space when it needs to. But of course, as we reach this intensity peak, this volume peak, this size peak, the very next section is silence, hyper contrast from the biggest to the smallest. And then to an odd ending that I don't really have much of a read on. But I do wonder what the aggression has to do, why it contrasts so heavily with what comes around it, why it's used so sparingly, what the intention is for that. Also, on the other side of this, speaking of vocals, there are the childlike spoken word things at the beginning of this track, the first 40 seconds or so. I almost forgot about that completely, but it does stand in stark contrast to pretty much everything. It is one of the few brighter tones within this track and isn't really marred by the darkness or the heaviness or the weight present harmonically or sonically throughout this track. There is an element of fun in the way these lines are delivered that the rest of the track does not extrapolate on. If anything, it goes in the exact opposite direction, says, we're not doing that. Which that high juxtaposition is something that I wonder what's going on. I think this is a track where extra information helps. Maybe interviews from the artist, or, well, we got to check out lyrics. I'm going to see if I can't find anything else on this track too to kind of figure out what they were going for with it. I have a general idea, but more specific intention, at least at this time, eludes me. So let's do that. Let's dive into some lyrics. We'll see where that takes the conversation. All right, quite a bit of background to this one. Odraza actually wrote this and recorded it in cooperation with the Museum of Krakow. It is a soundtrack for an exhibition titled Coexistence. The exhibition ran from 2021 to 2022 and deals with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on society. That explains, to me at least, some of the weight within this track. Or I was trying to figure out if I want to continue that thought or not, but I think I want to touch on the title first before we continue that thought about how the vibes of the track match COVID-19, the experience of that, how it transformed the world. The title, Acedia. I had to go look this up because I did not know. I never heard of the word before. Where I have too many tabs open. Acedia is sort of like, or maybe even related to apathy. It is defined as a state of listlessness or torpor, of not caring or being concerned with one's position or condition in the world. I looked up the difference between apathy and acedia, and it seems that apathy was traditionally called acedia at one time. It's about not caring. It's about choosing to not do anything in the face of responsibility, maybe. I find that really interesting because the generally bleak atmosphere of this track, the heavy weight of it all, the uncertainty, yeah, I do think that that fits the general feeling that I experienced in the people around me in the 2020s. But apathy, too, was something I found was on huge display. Now, I do know Odraza is Polish. I'm not sure what the society and cultural ramifications and effects of COVID were over there. I'm not sure if they saw the same sort of cultural, societal responsibility split that we saw here in the US. But it was almost bewildering and what's another good word for this? Insightful, possibly. The amount of people who seem to not care about their neighbor, maybe not their direct, specific neighbor, but simply the people around them. The sheer levels of selfishness on display, a rejection of societal responsibility to keep those around you safe from all levels of people, from citizens to government officials. It was mind-boggling and disheartening to see almost the anger and hatred toward your fellow human. And of course, this is not across the board, but it was certainly a much larger group of people than I ever expected. And so, what I find interesting is that while I think this track applies to maybe the feeling of COVID lockdowns, the isolation, the sort of negative view on the future, possibly, maybe a bleak outlook on how things might continue on because of the virus. I actually felt a lot of these feelings because of humanity, and maybe Odraza had intentions for showing that as well, but maybe they didn't. But that is what I get out of this track too, though. It is a secondary component to it. I think it makes the silence at the end, or near the end, the penultimate section, really stand out. It's the silence could represent a lot of things. It could even be a moment of silence for the lives that were claimed by COVID. It could be the silence that those lives don't have a voice anymore. It could be apathy in general, a lack of connection, caring, or action. And I think that's what I find I keep coming back to when I think about this track, is how malleable a lot of it can be relating to understanding and what you get out of it. It's one of those tracks that is quite possibly, because of the more vague nature of it, the more minimal approach to things, and the generally atmospheric writing style, it's going to be one of those tracks that you get out of it what you put into it. Even the sheer notion that I know it was written about COVID a year after COVID lockdowns had been lifted. Well, again, I don't know what kind of lockdowns Poland saw, but to me, it was the year after COVID. Not that COVID ever left. In fact, we have a nice summer resurgence coming up here in 2026. But 2020 to me was the year of COVID. That's where everyone was talking about it. That was the year we had the lockdowns. That was the year when people were masking up more frequently than they did. 2021 was where we started to relax the regulation, at least here in the States. Whether that was right or wrong, totally different conversation there. But that's the timeline of events over here. But even knowing what this was written about colors the track in a specific way. It tells a specific story. Everyone's going to have their own relationship to that time period. And those feelings and emotions are going to get tied into the music. They're going to give you a different understanding than someone else who listens to it. Yeah, very interesting track here, and something a little different than I would expect from Odraza. But these are going to be my thoughts on Acedia. What did you think of this? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, perspective, or opinion on this track? Let me know. Put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all three of those. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.